We're just waiting for everyone to come in, and I want to welcome you. My name is Mary Ann Monteleone, Director of Education for the Long Island Board of Realtors. Welcome to LIBOR's Wednesday webinar on this gorgeous, beautiful, fall, sunny day. And we have a very special guest with us today. And I could see, my goodness, our numbers we're almost at 100 already, and we just opened the webinar. So we'll get started. Why delay? We have a very special guest with us today, Linda Lugo. I asked her for an intro. I know her a long time, and she very modestly put a few sentences together, which is worth sharing. So let me deliver the intro for her. Excuse me for reading, Linda.
That's fine, Mary. It's fine.
Okay.
I can't remember it half the time, so that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. So Linda Lugo is the broker owner of Realty Masters North Shore in Huntington, and she was the president of the Long Island Board of Realtors in 2007 and president of the Multiple Listing Service of Long Island in 2012 and president of the New York State Association of Realtors in 2016. She currently sits on the board of managers of OneKey MLS. I will tell you, she and I chatted about the subject today, and she wanted to bring the accurate, helpful information to the members. So without further delay, I turn it over to Linda Lugo. Welcome.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Mary Ann, thank you, and thank LIBOR for allowing me to come here. I appreciate everyone who's in attendance today. It means a lot. And we are addressing today how to handle the rentals on the multiple listing service. So just a little bit before we get started, I want to bring forward the information. I'm going to tell you where to find the information. And always, if you have questions, you're always welcome to reach out to OneKey MLS or to myself to get answers. The most important thing is accurate information on OneKey. And I think that you being here today, and we have over 100 people here, I hope you're recognizing the importance for accuracy and in everything that we're doing. I also want to be able to point out today how to protect yourselves as listing agents on rentals. So we're going to cover all of this. So let's start this way. When it comes to rentals, everything that you have done in the past on rentals, residential rentals, we are going to have to shake it out of your head and put it all behind us, because the way that we were handling rentals on the multiple listing service was not correct. So I've been doing this business for 33 years. I've been part of this MLS, well, MLSLI and now OneKey for that period of time. And now I had to shake up my head, and we all have to wrap our heads around how we are going to do this when we handle rentals. So I'm going to share first my screen. I can promise you PowerPoint, I have 2 or 3 slides. That is it. So what we want to make sure we understand is how we're going to offer compensation when we handle residential rentals. So on the rental listings, there's 2 things that I want to address first. The first has to be that there must be an offer of compensation from the listing side, even if it is nominal. Now, that is Rule 503. Your rules book, which is very thick, can be found on Stratus. But if you go to Rule 503, that specifically says to enter a listing on the multiple listing service, you must have an offer of compensation from the owner of the property. Now, I want to make sure we distinguish between what the MLS rules are and what you may all be aware of out in the field about the New York State law handling rentals. So I'd like to just touch on that momentarily. Back last year, approximately around August, September, our governor put out a mandate and said that we can and cannot do certain things with handling rentals. For example, landlords can only charge 1 month security. We cannot charge a tenant more than $20 to have any kind of credit or background check run on them. So that is law that we have to follow. What happened was in January of 2020, which seems like eons ago, doesn't it? So earlier this year in January, New York State Department of State stepped in and interpreted the law that Governor Cuomo put out there. And they said, now this is the New York State Department of State, I'm paraphrasing. They said that a listing agent is not allowed to collect compensation from a tenant. Many people in our market went absolutely nuts because customarily the tenant pays the commission. NYSAR got thousands of calls. REBNY, the real estate board in New York, they got thousands of calls. So in February of 2020, NYSAR and REBNY got together, filed a lawsuit against New York State, and got a temporary restraining order on Department of State's mandate. So that being said, that has not gotten into a courtroom yet. The temporary restraining order is still in place. It will remain in place until a judge either lifts it or there's a decision made on the case. So that case is ongoing, and I am not an attorney, so I'm not going to get into the idiosyncrasies of the case, but I want you to be aware that what I'm telling you today has nothing to do with this law. If the law changes and it's determined that landlords, agents cannot collect from tenants, then we will address that later on. But right now, landlords, agents can still collect compensation from the tenant if that is what the arrangement is. So getting back to OneKey MLS, and I appreciate you letting me give you that little bit on the law. Getting back to OneKey MLS, an MLS was devised to offer cooperation and compensation. And because of that, it is a requirement that any listing that we put on the multiple listing service of OneKey has an offer of compensation from the owner of the property. Now, this is the part where you're going to have to start wrapping your head around this, and I'm going to show you some examples of what I mean. So, Marianne, I just want to ask, are there anybody questioning at this point in time anything at all? Okay, Marianne, I don't know if you're talking because you're muted, but I don't know if there's any. Okay, not hearing any questions, but I will be happy to address any questions. Let's just keep in mind Rule 503 of the offer of compensation. So I'm going to share with you now. Okay, so what you should be seeing on your screen now is the OneKeyMLS.com website. This is your resource of information, and I want to show you how this works. This is OneKeyMLSNY.com. This is the member site. This is where you can come and find out anything that you need to about OneKey and any kind of rules changes. So we have, if you go to the resources tab and the help center, I'm just going to hit Help Center Home. And on the Help Center Home, this is where you can find any important documents, any changes. We do have infographics and we have some instructional videos, but I'm just going to go to the very bottom of the page. I understand this webinar is being recorded, and we also have other recorded webinars. And most importantly, there is a rental listing compensation webinar. It's about a 2-minute webinar, besides this one being posted today, that you can go and learn about how to handle rental listings. So that's where you can find that information. Coming over now to Stratus, this screen should look very familiar to all of you. This screen here, all of our OneKey MLS links are here. The MLS forms, automatic fines, the rules, you can find everything here, including our enforcement facilitators. But again, we're here for rentals. So I want to show you, what I don't do on my webinars ever in anything teaching, I never throw anybody under the bus. So what I'm going to be bringing up on the screen are active listings on the multiple listing service where they are being done correctly. So I'm going to start with this first one. Just bear with me 1 minute. And here is a rental and it really doesn't matter where it is. So we're all familiar with the rentals here, but what this agent did is 100% correct. The fields on the bottom here, you can see, I'm going to open it up a little bit more. We have broker agency compensation, landlord agency compensation, tenant agency compensation. These fields are the compensation that we as a listing broker are offering out to the other brokers of the multiple listing service. So just like this is the part you're going to have to wrap your head around. Just as if you were taking a listing for sale, you would have to have a discussion with your seller as to how they want you to offer compensation, right? With the seller, you discussion of what the overall compensation is, and then you discuss with your seller after the overall compensation, are you going to compensate seller's agents, broker's agents, buyer's agents, and if so, what are you going to offer to them? Let's apply that entire theory to rental listings. When you sit down with the landlord, you have a discussion with the landlord about compensation. One conversation will be, who is going to pay the commission? If the landlord's paying the commission, this will be handled differently than if the tenant's paying the commission. So let's go on the first assumption. You sit down with the landlord and the landlord says, I'm not paying anybody. You need to get your compensation from the tenant. Well, what I need to explain to the landlord, and these are conversations you have to have with your broker as well, there has to be some type of offer of compensation from the landlord, even if it is a nominal amount. So on this particular listing, what this agent did is they decided through a conversation, hopefully with their landlord, that they were, if a cooperating broker, let's just call them ABC Realty, if ABC Realty is coming in to show this rental listing, and they're coming in as a broker agent or a tenant agent, the landlord will not give them anything. However, if they are coming in as a landlord agent representing the landlord, then the landlord through the listing broker will give them $1. Now, you may all be sitting there saying, what's this $1 and what's going on? So this is how you legally put a listing on the multiple listing service. There has to be one of these three fields must have either a dollar amount or a percentage amount in them. You can fill out one field with an amount, two fields, or all three fields. What this agent decided was to offer $1. Now I'm going to move you up to the remarks section. And so that makes you legal onto the MLS. Now we're going to go to the remarks section. And if we come here, now the landlord already told me as a listing agent, he or she's not paying me. So I need to tell the field, I need to tell all the cooperating brokers that I still need to get compensated from the tenant. So as you can see here, what this agent did is put in the agent only remarks, listing agent compensated paid by tenant half a month. So what we have told the field, I'm going to pretend this is my listing, which it is not. Let's say this is my listing. Landlord, we're going to offer $1 out to the cooperating agents. I now need to still get paid by the tenant. So I'm telling the field, whatever tenants you're bringing in here, I need from the tenant to pay me a half a month rent because I'm still allowed to under the law. And then this gives the option of the cooperating agent to say, Linda, I don't want your $1 that you're offering me from the landlord. I too am going to collect my commission from the tenant. So I'm opening this up for any questions at all. Okay, I see a question. Hello, would it be possible to have a copy of the slides for our future reference? I can tell you these slides are just, there's 3 of them. So I'd be happy to share, but there's really not much to share. I would recommend reading Rule 503. And what I have said to Mary Ann, I am always available to help anyone out with this as well. Another question is, why would a listing broker offer landlord agency? They are the listing broker and they represent the landlord. That is a great question. Let me explain this to you, but let's go back to agency for a moment because this ties into agency. Let's go back to when we learned as sales agents, and if you're brokers, you also relearned agency as brokers. When we represent and take a listing from a landlord, yes, we are a landlord's agent, but we have to have a discussion with the landlord, just like with our sellers, on how we want other agents to come into our property. So a cooperating agent can come in as a landlord agent. I say that's the same thing as being a seller's agent on a sale. So what we're saying at this point, whatever this agent, and again, I'm not saying the agent did anything wrong here. The agent had a discussion with their broker. This compensation field is strictly what's being offered out to cooperating agents. So if they're saying to the agents in the field, come in and represent my landlord, that is fine. I'm still the listing agent. You're coming in with the tenant, but you're telling the tenant you don't represent them. You're representing the landlord. Then you'll get paid your $1. Cooperating agents can come in any of these 3 ways. So let's go back again to how we teach agency and understand agency. Cooperating brokers can come in representing the landlord. They can come in representing as a broker's agent, where that means they're representing the listing broker, right? And takes away vicarious liability. Or they can come in representing the tenant's agent. So this is one way that this agent did this. Let me bring up another listing that was done properly, and I'll show you another way a different agent did this. Just bear with me 1 second. And okay, so this one coming up is in a different town. This is Huntington. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. And as you can see, what this agent did here is that this agent, she went in, the same thing, had a discussion with the landlord, and the discussion with the landlord was that we have to offer something. And this agent offered $1 compensation to tenant agents and 0 to landlord and 0 to broker. And just keep in mind, again, I'm not telling you how to do it or what to do. The discussion goes back to your broker first and then with your landlords on, because there may be some office policies on how you want to handle compensation. But getting back to this, in this particular listing, she offered $1 out. And if I go back up to the remarks section, and I'm going to the agent only, and I'm going to highlight it for you. Tenant to pay half-month commission to listing broker. So again, what this agent has said is, we've agreed to give $1 to any of you who want to come in if you want to get compensated by the landlord. What I want as the listing broker is a half-month rent commission. And this still gives the cooperating broker the ability to reject the $1 and get whatever they want from the tenant as well. So you can see that these agents are not telling the cooperating broker, cooperating agent, what compensation that they're going to get paid. What they're doing on the bottom is saying, if you want the landlord to pay you, you're going to get $1 if you come in as a tenant agent. I'm going to see if there's any, let me see what other questions. Let's see, somebody says, can you say in remarks, tenant is to pay 1 month broker's fee total, cooperating broker will receive a half-month fee. So thank you for that question, because that was going to be one of the ones I'm not posting, and using it as an example on what you should not do. The reason you should not post it that way is that if the tenant is being represented by the cooperating agent, that cooperating agent has the right to ask for whatever compensation they want. So we are not here to dictate to a cooperating agent who may have a relationship, a contractual relationship with a tenant. So the best thing to do is to do the minimal compensation on the bottom where you have to offer, and always keep in mind those 3 fields are compensation being offered out. It is not what we as the listing broker are expecting. What you want to do is put in that remark section what you are expecting. This way it is clear to the cooperating agent what the expectations are before they even show the property. Another question here is, can the agent collect half month's rent from the tenant and another half months from the landlord? Do we have to reveal that in the listing? So can the agent collect? So again, I am not an attorney, but let's go to Article 12A of our licensing law. And we are not allowed to collect commission from more than one party unless, well, I guess I should say you can collect from more than one party, but both parties have to agree to it, right? So there has to be informed consent. So you can't hide. If you're getting compensated from the landlord and you also want to be compensated by the tenant, there's nothing to prohibit you from doing that, but you must disclose to the landlord and the tenant what is happening here, and they have to agree to it. So that is not only New York State law, that is also in our Code of Ethics of the National Association of Realtors. These are all great questions. Let me see, and I'm hoping these are helping. So the next question is, so the bottom part of the MLS where the compensations are just refer to landlords paying compensation, agent remarks would show tenants paying compensation. That is correct. And to put a listing on the multiple listing service, you must have something in at least one of those fields. And OneKey MLS, I will tell you, if even on for sale listings, if they see that all these fields are zeros, they must remove the listing from the multiple listing service. They're not doing that now. What they're doing is they're reaching, and when I say they, the staff people, they're not doing that, but they are going to shoot an email to you if all these fields are zero. They will give you the day to correct it, and if you don't correct it, then they will have to pull it, because MLS is the spirit of cooperation and compensation, and when we put a listing out there, we have to offer something. The 2 examples only suggest the listing broker getting paid. What about the tenant's agent? So the tenant's agent, again, what we are saying about the tenant's agent is the tenant's agent has the right to, a tenant agency represents the tenant. They have a right to make up their agreement with the tenant and name their own compensation. A good example would be a house for sale. Let's compare it to taking a sale listing. You take a listing for sale and you offer X compensation out to a buyer's agent. The buyer agent comes in and puts an offer on the table, and on their offering, they don't have X as their commission. They're saying the buyer is going to pay them higher than X, and they want to work it into the transaction. They have the right to do that under their contractual obligation. So we should not be telling the cooperating broker what they can and cannot do, because they're the ones who are going to be in front of the tenant. And if they see that, like on this example here, I'm just moving it back up, if they are seeing that the listing agent's expecting to get half a month, they need to explain that to the tenant, and they should tell the tenant what the total compensation is, whatever it may be, a month, whatever. Okay, that they now say, then they will say the total compensation is this, and we're going to give this piece to the listing agent. You may see some listing agents, and I did not put this up on the screen because there were some things wrong with it. But there was a broker that stated that they wanted 60% of a month. That the listing broker put it out there for $1, and they put in there 60. They were expecting the tenant to pay them 60% of 1 month's rent. So that is telling the field that you need to inform the tenant with that information. The reason I did not put that up there was a bad example, because that agent also put on the listing that if they had a dog, there was a 1.5 month security, and under the law, you cannot charge more than 1 month security, end of story. So I did not want to share, like I said, at the top of this webinar, I will not throw people under the bus, and I'm not bringing up listings that I saw things wrong with. I'm not here to shoot anybody. So let me see what other questions we have before I move on. Okay, so what are the rules for listing rentals as exclusive or coming soon? The same as sales? Yes, it's the exact same rules that you have to follow for exclusive. So the clear cooperation, which are exclusive listings, and the coming soon, they're covered under the clear cooperation and coming soon. I don't want to get in there too much because I have a half hour left, and those two topics probably eat up about an hour of time. But rentals do fall under the same rules. And then the next question also, is there a service we can recommend to use for tenant application background credit checks? I'm not here to promote any companies out there. I certainly recommend you go to your broker. If you are the broker, do some research behind the scenes. I'm not sure if Member Services has any recommendations, but I'm not here to recommend any vendors. I'm really just here to help you understand how the rules are. And I'm going to get to why this is very important in a minute. I do want to show an example here of there might be a time where the listing agent, the landlord, will tell the listing agent that the landlord will compensate the listing agent, but not the tenant agent. Or we may have a situation where the landlord is going to compensate everybody. So let's take a look at those. I'm going to bring up first where the landlord is going to pay. Highly unusual for us here, but it can happen. And my screen will go as fast as Stratus lets me. So here's a listing where right here on the listing, in the agent remarks, it says owner is paying 1 month's broker's fee. Right there, the landlord's paying. Now at the bottom, on the bottom, they're saying it's 1 month's fee, and here's the offer of compensation. So what this agent did, they don't care if you're coming in as a broker's agent, landlord agent, tenant agent, however you come in, the landlord is going to pay you $1,000, but the total is that 1 month. So here it is clearly spelled out. What the agent didn't really have to do, did not have to put anything in here about the whole month. What they really just had to do was put in here that the owner will pay $1,000 to the cooperating agent. So this is an example of the landlord paying the fee. So this could have been changed. There's nothing wrong with what this person did. That's why I brought it in here. This broker's just telling everybody landlord's going to pay a month, and out of that month, that $1,000 is coming in your direction. So you may see listings like that. And let me bring up an example of a listing where the landlord says, I'll pay my agent, and then the other agent has to get from the tenant. Okay, so here is one that's in the Bronx, and what we have no remarks here at all. No remarks. So if there's nothing in the remarks section, that is basically telling everyone that the landlord is going to compensate the listing broker because the listing broker has posted nothing here at all on their compensation. At the bottom, the listing broker here did what they needed to do. They put $1 out to tenant agents. So if they want to take the dollar, they can do it. But the tenant agent most likely has an agreement and should have an agreement with the tenant, and whatever they decide is the commission that will go to them. Now, again, I know this is all new and different to us. And for those of us, especially someone who's been doing this a long time like me, it's not easy to wrap your head around this. But please keep in mind that this field here is only what is being offered out. I have to say that probably high 90% of people that are doing this are not doing it correctly. And that's why the educational piece is here. And this is why we did this webinar today. And I'm hoping that if you are the broker of your office, manager of your office, please spread the word. And if you're not, please share it with your fellow agents, because this is what's going to happen. This is the downside if you do not do it properly. I'm going to give an example. I'll just use this listing as an example. What would happen if I have a dollar figure in here greater than $1? Let's just say, for example, I'm going to look at this listing and the list price is $4,000 a month. So what happens if I come down here and my agreement with my landlord is that the tenant has to pay the cooperating broker, but I put in, say, tenant agency compensation, $2,000. So let's just pretend for a minute, if you could just bear with me, that this is $2,000. So someone in the field sees this listing and the assumption is, oh, the landlord, if I rent this place, is going to pay me through their broker $2,000. So now I go in, cooperating broker from ABC Realty comes in, brings a tenant, we negotiate, leases get signed, and now the ABC Realty says, okay, to the listing broker, give me my $2,000. And the listing broker says, I don't know what you're talking about. And ABC Realty says, you offered me $2,000. I want my $2,000. So this is why it's important to wrap your head around this, because if you offer some type of compensation, the field comes in, now is expecting you to pay, and you don't pay, you may end up in an arbitration case with this, and it won't be a pretty sight. Again, I've sat on professional standards, I've sat on grievance. I can't tell you upfront who will win, who will lose. But I've been doing this a long time. And if there's an offer of compensation here, we are obligated to make sure the cooperating broker gets paid that. So this is the importance behind here. I'm trying to protect everyone. I'm not here to report anybody. I'm not here to do anything else other than to give the educational piece so that you can go and say, oh, I got to really think about what this is saying. And again, this really is not OneKey. I can tell you that when we were MLSLI, unfortunately, I hate to admit it, we were doing it wrong. We were always doing it wrong. And this is the way to correct it in the field. Now, whether you want this to be $1, $2, $10, this is not a discussion here. This would be a discussion that you have with your broker. So let me see what other questions we have here. Okay, so I see agents putting listing fee as 10% of 1 year rent. I have to tell you that if in this field here, that if I see that 10% of 1 year rent, that means that I, as the listing broker, am compensating the cooperating broker 10% of 1 year's rent. If I, as the listing broker, expect to get 10% of 1 year's rent as your example, or any percent of 1 year's rent to my side, it goes in the agent's remarks. Good question. These are all good questions. Next one. So as a listing broker, I can put in landlord or tenant agency, $1. Does it matter which field I use? So the answer to that question is yes, it matters. And it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to OneKey MLS, but it may matter to your broker and it may matter to your landlord. So this brings up agency and how you want agents coming into your rental listings. Do you want them coming in as a landlord agent where the landlord could have vicarious liability? Do you want them coming in as a broker's agent where the listing agent could be liable for that cooperating broker's actions? Or do you want them coming in as tenants agents where they represent the tenant? So the fields matter from an agency point of view. MLS could care less. All MLS cares about is that you cannot have 3 zeros. So that really is a discussion that, with your broker and with your clients on representation. So it does matter. Again, it doesn't matter to me what you do, and it doesn't matter to MLS as long as there's no 3 zeros. Next one, please explain again the difference between broker agents and landlord agency. Okay, landlord agency, if someone's coming in as a landlord agent, and this is how I explain it when I give these classes, and the cooperating broker makes a mistake, whatever that mistake is, and now the tenant comes and sues the cooperating agent. Well, not only is the cooperating agent responsible, and not only is the listing broker responsible, but the landlord is responsible as if you offer landlord agency. Broker agency is different because it has removed the vicarious liability away from the landlord. So if now the cooperating broker makes an error, they can be sued and responsible, and the listing broker can be sued and responsible. So that's the difference. It has to do with the liability back to the landlord client. And it's the same thing with offering seller agency compensation on our sales. So again, I didn't mean to get into an agency compensation, but these are good questions. So please have an understanding of agency. It really is very important. So good questions. Thank you. Let's see. Next, if the cooperating agent comes in as a landlord's agent with $1 compensation, doesn't that mean that agent is working in the landlord's best interest and not in their clients? Yes. If they're coming in as a landlord's agent, they, and again, let's not mix agency with compensation. If they're going to come in as a landlord agent, they're representing the landlord. Even though down here, let's just say there is $1, doesn't mean that they can't come in as a tenant agent, even if it says 0. It's just saying that the landlord's not going to compensate a tenant agent if it says 0. But as a tenant agent, you can represent the tenant and you can get compensated by your tenant. So there's nothing to preclude you from showing a listing that offers 0 to tenant agency compensation. It's just that you know that the landlord's not even going to give you a dime or $1. Next question I see, and these are all great questions. In that case, how can we be sure that the cooperating agent was really representing that client as a landlord's agent? Are we supposed to ask up front like in sales? So yes, you have the right to ask somebody who's making an appointment up front who they're representing. You have that right. And in fact, they're supposed to disclose it. They're supposed to, and when someone is calling in to make an appointment, they're supposed to disclose if they're representing the tenant or they're representing the buyer. So we have the right to ask that question and know before they go in, because you want to know as the cooperating broker who you're working with. You know, if they're coming in as a tenant's agent, they're not working in the landlord's best interest. And that's okay. You just want to know the information so you know how best to work with your landlord and explain to your landlord. Next one, if the compensation field says 0.5 to all agents and agent remarks says tenant to pay 1 month broker fee, what happens if tenant contacts listing agent directly? Does this mean listing agent gets the full 1 month, or technically are they entitled to only 50%? So the compensation field, again, if we go back to what we're talking about, if I see 0.5, now maybe I'm going to assume 0.5 I would make sure you start using dollar signs and percentage. So if I see 0.5, I may assume that the landlord is going to pay the cooperating agent a half a month's rent. So regardless of what's in the agent remarks, and that's why we have to stop putting in the agent's remarks field that the total commission is 1 month and 50% here and 50% there. Keep in mind, this bottom section on the screen here is what you're offering out. So if you put in 0.5 or 0.5% or 5% of 1 year, this is what you are offering out. And when we start doing this and when everybody starts coming around and doing it the right way, I don't want to see any of you in arbitration. I don't want to see it. I don't want to be, as a panel member, having to do these things. Just want to see what else I have here that I will not post because I already talked to you about the 1.5 month pet security. An agent did something really good here, and I didn't post it because I thought it could have been better. What they put in the remarks was broker fee of half month must be paid by tenant. I would just add to that to listing broker. So instead of it saying broker fee of half month must be paid by tenant, that leaves it kind of open. I would just make sure it's clear that I would put in there, the listing broker expects the tenant to pay half a month or 40% of a month or whatever the case may be. Be very specific in that agent remarks section. And I'm looking to see if there's any other questions here. And I thank you for these questions. I really do. Okay, so what really needs to happen to these fields need to be separated, one for agency type and one for compensation, because agency does not constitute compensation. So when you take a listing, right? When you take a listing, your conversation with the landlord, you have to discuss the different ways that agents can come in, but you can't stop an agent from coming in under any of these categories. It would violate the law. So the agents have the right to come in any of these 3 ways. So a separate field is not going, in my opinion, is not going to accomplish anything because they can come in any way they want to. But we on the listing side can control how we're going to offer compensation with the discussion with our brokers and our landlords, right? We have to have these discussions. You can't just take a listing, throw it in front of a landlord's face and say, sign here, sign here. You have to say to them, yes, the tenant's going to pay the commission, and what we are going to expect from what I'm going to expect is the tenant to give me a half a month or whatever the case may be. And so agency, we can't stop anyone from coming in, but I can stop how, through my landlord, how people get compensated. So obviously, if I'm offering on a rental 0 to a landlord agent, or if I'm offering on a sale 0 to a selling agent, I don't think anybody wants to come in under that category because they're getting 0. So again, I appreciate your question, but one agency, we can't stop. You can come in and show a listing however you want. How the listing broker through their client offers compensation is what we're talking about here. And okay, I don't see any other questions, and let me make sure I have covered everything. And again, here is one I didn't post because it is not correct. They did offer $1 down to tenant agent, which was great, but in the remarks field, they put tenant pays 1 month fee, which is split 60% to the listing broker and 40% to the rental agent side. What's wrong with this is that, again, that tenant agent could have an agreement with the tenant, and whatever their compensation is their compensation. What I would have done here to correct this is I would say listing broker to receive 60% of 1 month. That would have been perfect for this listing. This one is pretty similar. And then this one has, this one I'm not posting, has down here, and this is where I know people are confused, and I get it. I get it. This is a whole learning curve, and we're all in this together. So what I have seen is on this broker agency compensation, on this one listing I have in front of me, they put broker agency compensation 50/50. On landlord agency compensation, they put $1, and on tenant agency compensation, they put 1 month. So I know the confusion in the field, and I'm not here in any way, shape, or form expecting this to get corrected overnight. There's 100 plus of you here, 196, right up there. So I'm hoping that you will share with your offices, that you will go back and if you're not the manager, broker, share with your broker managers. I told Marianne earlier today that I would be happy to speak. We can obviously through Zoom. Any companies that want me to come in and explain this to their brokers, managers, agents, I mean, I'm kind of opening a can of worms here, but I'm happy to do it. I already have one company that is going to have put me on Zoom. I already did it with some of their managers. I'm going to go in and do this because this is the importance. I want to keep you away from running into an arbitration scenario. You know, this is all about putting it out the right way on multiple listing and making sure that as the listing agent, you're doing it the right way. So I'm going to look to see if there's any other questions here. The question, so recording of the meetings, all of these webinars are recorded and they're posted at lirealtor.com under education. Go to the webinars, and not just this webinar, there's been some great webinars that LIBOR has had. You can go there and find these webinars and watch them.
Yes. Hi, Linda. It's Mary.
Yes, Marianne, thank you.
I saw you are handling the questions. Thank you for that. And I'll put the address in the chat. And yeah, in the chat. It's lirealtor.com/COVID. And all of the webinars, scroll all the way to the bottom. And I think there are 36 or 37 webinars. And you'll see a picture of the presenter and the title, and everything is there.
Thank you, Marianne. I found it through education, like however you, but that's fine. Listen to Marianne, whatever she puts in the chat box, that's how you get there. And I appreciate you being here, but there's other great webinars that you could watch there as well. So any other questions on here? I'm just going down. See, I think I've answered the questions. Oh, here's a long one. Okay. Just bear with me. I'll read the whole question. If you put $1 in compensation for tenant's agent and also put in the remarks that a listing broker expects half-month rent paid by the tenant, and then a prospective tenant calls directly but somehow has the broker copy or is an attorney representing themselves, can they say and expect to only pay half a month while the listing broker expects a full month's payment if there is no other cooperating broker? So to answer that question, the offer of compensation, as you see here, offers of compensation are for OneKey MLS participants only. So I'm going to speak to if this tenant, for some reason, got this listing. That, you know, this is the broker full listing, right? The ones that go out to clients and customers don't show the compensation field. But if they got their hands on it and now went to someone who may be licensed but not a member of OneKey, then you do not have to be offering any of your compensation out, and there would have to be a discussion on what your compensation will be. So what this here, and I know what you're talking about, if you put something in the remarks that you're expecting 0.5% and now that your listing goes rogue out there, I think that you still have the right to talk about your commission. Everything is negotiable, okay? But again, I encourage you to go back to your brokers and see how they would want you to handle this. And I know that our listings sometimes end up in other people's hands. And if you're going to give people listings, you should not be giving them the broker full. But I'm not here to police you. So here we go. So now we get compensated by the landlord or tenant if the tenant comes directly to the listing agent till the New York State case is settled. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. Right now, as a listing broker for a rental, I can be compensated by the landlord or the tenant. And hopefully this is answering your question. That would be the discussion that I have with the landlord at the time I'm taking the listing. If the landlord says, I'm not paying you, you got to get your compensation from the tenant, I can legally still get paid by the tenant, right? Because everything right now is in litigation, and until a court makes a decision on anything, we are following the rules as we always have. The temporary restraining order, the TRO, is in place so we can do business as usual. And New York State Association of Realtors, Long Island Board of Realtors will let you know once a decision has made or if there has been any extensions. If anybody's had any experience with courts, things take time, and especially in times of COVID, things do not happen overnight. This lawsuit was launched back in February, and because of COVID, there's been delays and extensions, but that temporary restraining order is the most important piece for us that the courts have issued. Court said status quo with this, and that's why we're sitting there. So again, what I'm telling you today is really about the MLS and protecting you as a listing broker and how to effectively offer compensation. The law, if and when it changes, may be guiding us a lot differently than we are seeing now. So right now, landlord listing agent can be compensated by either landlord or tenant or both with informed consent. Okay, I'm going to see if there's more questions here. I think we have a few more minutes, and I appreciate everybody's patience here. And I'm not trying to jump over anybody. So if I happen to miss your question, I'm going to put up on the screen who you can email your questions to. Okay. So the question that came up is, what if they put $1 in the landlord? Is that an issue if you also put in agent's remarks that it will be split by both? So that $1 that I put down here in that landlord agency field, right? I'm just moving that out of the way. If I put $1 here, that is what being paid out to the other side. Has nothing to do with what I as a listing agent am being compensated. Okay. Okay, how do you get in touch with me if you have questions in the future? So let me do this. Okay, so our staff is wonderful. And if you have any questions, you can email info@onekeymls.com. And I'm also going to put in the chat. Well, I don't know. Do I have access to the chat? So here it is. My email, if you go to info@onekeymls.com, you will get a faster response than if you email me. I am fine if you email me, but keep in mind, I'm working in the field just like you're working in the field, right? We're all working at this, and you know how crazy the market is. So if I don't get back to you right away, don't get frustrated. So here is first info@onekeymls.com. And the other one, for some reason, I don't see my chat, but it's easy. It's Linda Lugo @lindalugo.com. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about this. This is really one of our hottest topics right now. I know we have other ones with clear cooperation and coming soon, but I am hoping that through education, we can get the field on track here and using this properly, because when again, I don't want to see any of you in arbitration over the misunderstanding of these compensation fields. So any other questions? I have about 4 or 5 minutes left. I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, I think we would be moving on. I don't see any others, but Mary Ann, do you see anything I don't see?
I don't. I'm checking both the chat and the Q&A, and I think we're good.
Okay, well, thank you all. And somebody said, thank you for class. I thank you all for coming in here. I appreciate your time. This is very important. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I can't wait to see you all out in the field. So have a great day.
You too, Linda. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marion.